I went to Johns Hopkins, I went to UPenn, and I've ghostwritten college apps for over 1,200 clients. Here is a personal statement that got somebody into Harvard. I'm going to be reading it and then analyzing it throughout and at the end. Let's get started. When I was little, my grandfather taught me the German word Waldeinsamkeit, the feeling of being truly alone in a deep forest. Forests are special in Germany, he explained. In Florida, it's swamps, pointing to the brackish pond behind his house. So already, unique word choice, brackish pond, like very good description. Also, to have a foreign word in your intro or your hook, colleges love that. Anyways, let me go on. As long as it's significant. But back then, I knew only that he was a scientist and that my mom's forehead furrowed when he was mentioned. It was years before I saw him again, and many years before I learned that, despite the silence of forests and families, no one is truly alone. So already getting into the theme, instead of saying my mom was stressed when he was mentioned, my mom's forehead furrowed. Look at that description that implies rather than explicitly states. Gotta love it. I always felt that science was in my blood. In 8th grade, I attended the summer science and engineering program at Smith College. I left hoping to study chemistry. That was what my grandfather had taught. So in high school, I emailed dozens of labs and received one positive response from a plant lab. Plants? They didn't move or talk. They're boring, I thought, and I had accidentally killed every plant I'd touched, including a fake one I dropped. See, they're very funny with it. But Dr. Yanofsky encouraged me. He also taught me that most of what I'd assumed about plants was wrong. New research suggests injured Douglas firs send distress signals to nearby pines through a series of mycorrhizae, a fungi which acts like a plant internet. In other words, trees talk to each other and are friends during hard times. They help injured trees by sharing resources. If we listen at the right frequency, we can literally hear forests communicating. In Dr. Yanofsky's labs, I began using CRISPR-Cas9 to explore two genes in Arabidopsis thaliana. It took years, but my engineered plants produced nearly 3 times the fruit of the wild-type average, with clear applications toward world hunger. I entered my project in the Greater San Diego Science and Engineering Fair, where I won first place in sweepstakes, sending me to the International Science and Engineering Fair, where I became a finalist. So immediately, the importance of the grandfather, the origin story, the science, is being pushed towards a strong end, solving world hunger, and shows exactly what the person does about it. They enter the fair, they clearly have results, they clearly are motivated to achieve their goals. Very good science for colleges. They go on to say, the next year I took these principles to the Garcia Scholars Program at Stony Brook University to study nanotoxicity. I've learned that people across the globe speak a universal language of science, including bad puns. I also learned that everyone had a mentor. So see, trees communicate, so do scientists. It's a very subtle parallel over there. That's why I helped launch the Student Leadership Board of GSD-SEF. Traveling to dozens of schools, leading monthly Saturday workshops, I saw classrooms without science equipment. I met kids whose parents couldn't afford even modest science fair entry fees. So I created Science Fair Buddies, a mentoring program at a middle school where most students receive free lunch. I persuaded a local company to provide financial support and recruited Science Fair alumni as mentors. We hold workshops when late buses are available. I've learned to look and listen in ways that I hadn't before. Will there be snacks often means I haven't had a meal today. Kids make formal presentations in t-shirts because that's their only shirt. Seats for parents at award ceremonies are often empty. Taylor, a 5th grader with orange hair, comes with her grandfather, and he's her primary caretaker. Many kids seem to be their own caretakers. So it gets into the brutal realities of the world. It's very layered. Look at all the layers of this story. In the last year, in awkward conversation, I learned that my mother was one of these kids. I learned my grandfather was an alcoholic. That she spent afternoons stranded at bus stops. That he once ran over her dog. That he broke down a neighbor's door to bring her back home. That the swampy pond behind her house was her designated meeting spot for her friends to comfort her. Last year, we traveled across the country to bring him home to live with us. He was alone and was suffering from progressive dementia. Some days he speaks nonsense, asking for blue noses for lunch. But yesterday he said his hobby was finding truth where it may not always be obvious. Forests may be peaceful, but they're not lonely or even silent. Trees and people are always sharing resources in ways that remind us that we're never truly alone. Perfect encapsulation, ties right back to the hook. It brings a forward-looking energy to the end of it and a moral that is a lot more hidden than typical personal statements might try to portray. Look, over there's been hundreds of acceptances to Harvard, Stanford, and all of those schools. But all successful Ivy League essays demonstrate at least 2 of 3 vital things: impact, insight, and identity. Olivia's essay here really powerfully explores the first 2, impact and insight. And after athletic recruits and donors, identity-driven elements often are a key role in Ivy League admissions. And if your identity is likely to contribute to the diversity of an Ivy level campus, embrace it and explore it, I would say. But what if, at least in the eyes of admissions officers, your identity is not helpful? What if you're just like a basic white girl? Well, that's how Olivia described herself when when she's in interviews, for example, like this person has been interviewed. But still, just because she was kind of basic identity-wise doesn't mean she only had a basic impact. So because she was too young to work in animal labs, in the 9th grade, according to her interview, she wrangled her way into a plant lab, and her work there led to meaningful discoveries, and eventually it led her to the ISEF, the fair that she was talking about in the essay. She also had a huge outreach program to share her love of science, so that's impact. She created an outreach program, very impactful. But without insight and effort to explain the larger social and personal significance, a student's impact is just a resume. So any good editor will help students find that insight. And in Olivia's case, she read a book called The Hidden Life of Trees, and that really inspired her. So that's why you need to read more books too. It'll inspire you to make a phenomenal personal statement as well. If you need your essays ghostwritten, you know exactly who to call, the guy with the 99.5% client satisfaction rating. Thank you very much. I also went to Johns Hopkins and UPenn.